If you want to be able to heal from narcissistic abuse, understanding the very real impact that narcissistic manipulation is having on you is a really good place to start. And that's what I'm covering today. Let's get started. Hi friends, Tamie M. Joyce here, Empowerment Life Coach, creator of the Freedom Class and the Ascension Class. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. Please take a second to say hello and introduce yourself in the comments section below. And if you're back, welcome back. Thanks for showing up and for tuning in. Either way, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. So let's talk about the impact of narcissistic manipulation. In all the years I've been coaching, not once has someone ever come to me wanting to learn how to stop manipulating or otherwise harming and abusing others. On the other hand, not surprisingly, those who are or have been victims of narcissistic manipulation frequently seek help and support in an effort to learn how to cope with a relationship that's causing them tremendous stress, pain, confusion, and frustration. And generally, by the time the target of narcissistic manipulation is distressed enough to actively seek out help, he or she is already displaying very clear signs of the detrimental impact of the narcissistic manipulator's mind games, gaslighting, power, and control dynamics. Clearly, the initial honeymoon or idealization phase of the relationship has long passed, and the narcissistic manipulator has managed to increase the intensity as well as the severity of the coercive control progressively over time. And some common examples of coercive controlling behavior are isolating you from friends and family, in particular anyone who might be onto them, as well as monitoring your every move, where you go, who you spend time with, depriving you of basic needs such as money, food, transportation, or basic necessities of life. And sometimes this type of coercive control goes so far as monitoring you via online communication tools and spyware. Fun stuff. And certainly there are times when the target of the narcissistic manipulation knows full well that they're being manipulated. And what's worse, they realize that they're caught in a web partly of their own making. However, other times, the ability to see clearly and discern the true nature of the manipulative dynamic in which they are enmeshed completely escapes them. In my view and experience, the more we were manipulated and controlled in these ways in early childhood, the less likely we're going to be able to see it for what it is as adults. We're literally blind to what's going on and why. Because A, this type of behavior was absolutely normalized in our early childhood experiences, and B, we've been programmed to believe that no matter how appallingly we're being treated, we're the issue, and therefore we're to blame. Either way, whether we're able to see it for what it is or not, the target lives with chronic feelings of confusion about what the manipulator's motives really are and what they actually want. And the longer they're in the relationship with the narcissistic manipulator, the more the target struggles with an overall sense of malaise, feeling generally unhappy, highly anxious, stressed out, as well as feeling consumed with both rational as well as irrational fear and worry. In addition, the target will often feel out of control when it comes to their own emotional state, as well as their own behavior, only sometimes recognizing that the narcissistic manipulator is the one causing all of this angst within them, and quite deliberately at that. And inevitably, reactive abuse becomes part of the equation. And how this works is the target finally erupts in reaction to the ongoing emotional manipulation, control, and psychological abuse they're experiencing. Maybe they yell and scream, do some name calling, or otherwise lash out at the abuser in response to being abused. And of course, this happens with the hope of being able to make the abuse stop. But here's the clincher. The narcissistic abuser then retaliates by telling the target of their abuse that the target is in fact the abusive one. Now let me be clear. Defending yourself against abuse does not make you the abuser. This is, among other things, a very serious form of gaslighting, friends. And if you want to learn more about gaslighting, you can watch my video here called Gaslighting Explained with Examples. The bottom line is abusers deliberately manufacture and rely on reactive abuse because it gives them the so-called proof that the victim is unstable, irrational, or delusional. Then they run around town claiming to be the victim of the person they themselves have been targeting, abusing, and victimizing the entire time. And people fall for this nonsense. Unless you've been on the receiving end of this kind of emotional manipulation and psychological abuse, it's hard to fathom that what are often very well presented, high functioning, and highly respected people are treating their so-called loved ones this way. But it happens every day. And it doesn't stop there. Narcissistic abusers will also go so far as to hold these reactions against the target of their abuse indefinitely, bringing up specific instances of self-defense many years after the fact, and as a result, the target and anyone else who will listen is gaslit into believing the target is the issue, the problem, the abusive one. When in reality, what's really going on is the target is simply having a natural feeling response to being poked, provoked, prodded, manipulated, controlled, and systematically abused over time, and finally musters the strength to stand up for themselves and maybe even fight back. Imagine? Here's the thing. While it's true that the target may not yet be in a place of clarity and understanding as to the manipulative dynamic or the role he or she plays in the abuse cycle, however, an experienced coach, counselor, therapist, or sponsor for that matter, can and will see the signs left by the narcissistic manipulator as the signs and symptoms manifest all over the disempowered target's emotional state. And this is never more obvious than when someone is subjected to what is perhaps the most effective form of psychological manipulation, which goes as follows: attack, retreat, pretend to be on your side, especially when others are watching, and then attack again. It's an incredibly vicious cycle many of us have lived as children in our dysfunctional family systems. And what this does is cause cognitive dissonance and ultimately a trauma bond between the target of the abuse and their narcissistic abuser. And if you're not sure what I mean by cognitive dissonance, the term cognitive dissonance is used in psychology to describe the extreme mental discomfort that results from holding two conflicting thoughts, beliefs, values, or attitudes. Naturally, people need and therefore seek consistency in their beliefs and perception of reality. So, this intense internal conflict brought on by narcissistic manipulation causes serious feelings of confusion and, again, extreme levels of discomfort. Now, comment below and tell me whether or not you've experienced any of these signs and symptoms of narcissistic manipulation. And if so, what are you doing about it? How are you supporting yourself? What are you doing to take care of yourself? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you'd like to learn more about the possibility of working with me in my 8-week transformational coaching program, the Freedom Class, there is a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. What many people don't realize is there is often an implicit or silent agreement between the narcissistic manipulator and their chosen target, not to speak directly about the rules of the relationship. A big part of what narcissistic manipulators control is what is and is not permissible in terms of open dialogue or discussion, both within as well as about the relationship, especially anything that doesn't cast the narcissist in a favorable light. Anything of that nature, of course, is going to be completely off limits. And don't kid yourself, the narcissistic manipulator manages to control the dynamic simply by being unwilling or unavailable to participate in a given conversation. For example, they'll say things like, "I'm not in the mood to talk to you right now," or "I don't have time to talk to you." And of course, when it comes to being called out or held accountable in any way, the right time for the conversation never comes. And the narcissistic manipulator will usually convey their displeasure non-verbally with stone-cold facial expressions, the clenching of the jaw, the sociopathic-like cold, hard stare, or simply by ignoring the target altogether, walking out, or otherwise indicating that they're not open to having a discussion. In other words, stonewalling. Open dialogue and clear communication, especially as it pertains to the manipulation, abusive power and control dynamics present in the relationship, are absolutely forbidden. And this is classic in the dysfunctional family system, where the don't talk, don't trust, don't feel motto are the unspoken rules that keep the toxic and shameful family secrets well hidden, often for decades, lest anyone realize what's actually been going on behind closed doors. Further, the very real threat of conflict, confrontation, and inevitable punishment are ever present as a means of control over the narcissist's chosen target, especially if the target dares even so much as suggest that anything inappropriate, unfair, or never mind downright abusive is actually taking place. Thus, the silent pact and agreement continues as the target continues to sell their soul to the devil of peace at all costs, go along to get along, hoping one day things will change as they continue to get worse over time. And the reason for this is when threats are implicit and no direct response or pushback is tolerated, the only power the implied threat, coercion, or intimidation has lies in the target's perceived inability to talk openly and safely about the fact that he or she feels manipulated and or otherwise exploited and abused. Perceived being the operative word here. You can take your power back. But as long as the real agenda of the manipulator is kept obscured or hidden, the pattern will continue to play out. By outright controlling or otherwise limiting communication, the narcissistic manipulator creates mounting frustration and intense hostility in their chosen target. Moreover, feelings are often internalized, which only compounds the emotional and psychological harm the target has to live with. Whether you realize it or not, allowing yourself to be manipulated by anyone in your life literally means that you are relinquishing your personal sovereignty and handing over control of your own thoughts, feelings, choices, and behavior to someone else. And something else you may or may not realize is that the control will invariably shift to becoming more and more coercive over time. Once the narcissistic manipulator realizes they can have their way with you, and especially once they feel they have any sort of leverage on you, the level and intensity of the manipulation and control dynamic will only increase as time goes on. That is the dirt honest truth of what you have to look forward to if you don't start standing up for yourself. So what's the solution? Well, in my view, the solution lies in learning how to take your power back so you can become fully self-sufficient, self-reliant, and independent, so you can ultimately enjoy healthy interdependent relationships with relatively healthy others who, quite unlike the manipulative narcissist, actually have your best interest at heart. In order to be able to do this successfully, you're likely going to have to do a few things to support yourself as you begin to learn a whole new way of being on your way to breaking free from the manipulative and controlling dynamic you find yourself in. First, you need a solid support system around yourself. People who not only understand the problem, but more importantly, understand and are living in solutions that actually work. Second, you're going to need to commit to doing some serious healing and recovery work for yourself. Not just watching YouTube videos and reading a few books. Although that can be helpful in terms of validating you, your feelings, and the experiences you've survived, it's never going to be enough to make the deep internal shifts you need to make to permanently break the subconscious patterns and programming. So give yourself a gift and figure out a way to commit to healing whatever it is that's going on inside of you that compelled you towards a narcissistic manipulator to begin with. Once you do that work, the whole game changes for the better and fast. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. But don't stop now. I have well over 100 more videos right here on YouTube for you to watch to help you better understand the detrimental effects of narcissistic abuse and, more importantly, learn what you need to do now to heal from the abuse so you can start living your best life in peace, confidence, and freedom. And if you want to go deeper with me, go to TamieMCoaching.com and learn about my unique, tried and true process garnered over decades of experience and learn how you can become my client.